Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. Back to Basics Reporting 101. My name is Alan Cabinet, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get underway, I'd just like to point you to the questions box. So throughout, if you have any questions, please submit them via the questions box. We'll also be running a polling question today, and we'd appreciate your participation. So today I'm delighted to have on the line with me Ernesto Ungaro, who is our Senior Product Marketing Manager, and Alesh Mistry, who is our Senior Solutions Consultant. With that, I'll hand you over to Ernesto.
Thank you, Alan, and good morning, everybody. It's actually a very popular webinar topic this morning. Great number of attendees out there, and we're really happy to see some interest in reporting. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. The thing is, we're in 2017. I mean, we live in the age of big data, where petabytes of information are created every day. Through visual analytics, anyone with a small amount of training can make sense of that data. And we're also in the age of data science and machine learning. Where does that leave reporting? Isn't, old reporting that started way back and, used to be printed on paper, is that dead? Is that something that we've moved on from? Well, the truth is, and the fact that we have so many people on this webinar shows that it's not a dead topic. It's actually quite an alive topic. So in 2015, Information Week did a survey. 88% of enterprises are using reports extensively. That was something like 20% of organizations using data science extensively. So while all those new technologies have come in and are finding their place in our daily lives, reporting is still king. And we can also see that from our Jasper Reports project. So in September 2001, an open source project called Jasper Reports was created by a talented Java programmer called Theodore Danshu. The product is now the world's most downloaded reporting tool on the planet. We get over 15,000 downloads per month, and that's only from SourceForge alone, the public stats. We have 500,000 users active in the last 10 years in our community database, and in the last 6 months we have 44,000 active users. So obviously a very, very popular topic still today in 2017. Some of the major use cases we see for reporting are outlined on this slide. So on the top left, you've got client statements. So that's like sending out an invoice, sending out a statement to all of your clients, let's say once a month. Usually highly formatted, usually printed or emailed as a PDF. Then you've got management scorecards. That kind of gets more into classic business intelligence type reporting or scorecarding. On the bottom left, you've got embedded. So the screenshot there on the left of that frame is an IT monitoring utility, but basically any software now is going to include some sort of reports. And then finally, at the bottom right, financial regulatory type reports. So whether it's just like P&L type statements or whether it's some sort of regulatory reports that you, as a bank or financial institution, need to turn into the government once a quarter. Those are all still very common reporting use cases we see. So, since reporting was kind of invented, if you want to get like the full history of reporting, you should download this ebook called "Is Reporting Dead?" We're doing it for free for limited time, and it's written by Theodore Danshu, the guy who kind of started Jasper Reports. Great book if you haven't picked it up already. But they highlight in the book 4 major game changers in enterprise reporting. The kind of major trends, the first one, not all data is flat, hello NoSQL. From 1970 until 2010, all of our data was dominated by rows and columns and SQL. and now there's a plethora of data stores, including MongoDB and Cassandra, that store data more flexibly than just rows and columns. So we're actually seeing some of our reporting customers adapting that. Number two, ditching the printer. So reporting started mostly as something printed on paper, and now it's embedded into web applications. And with that came the need for interactivity in reports. Number three is near real time with APIs. So if you think about it, when reporting started, it was like usually delivered to you maybe like once a month by maybe an IT professional. And now with the ability to schedule and the ability for calling reports with APIs, you pretty much call reports whenever you need them instead of whenever they were provisioned by somebody else. And that has huge implications for professionals like us who are in charge of delivering reports. And then the last one, a sea of visualization types. So previously when you printed reports, you were kind of limited in what you could do as far as visualizations went. Now moving to the interactive web has brought on a sea of visualization types, including our custom visualization component, which can kind of let you build your own visualization. So those were kind of the four game changers that we've seen in the last few decades with reporting, and has really transformed the industry and transformed the tools. So getting more into the actual content of the webinar, there's kind of two types of reporting as far as Jaspersoft sees it. You've got pixel perfect reporting, and you've got self-service web reporting. This webinar, by the way, is going to focus more on pixel perfect reporting and less on self-service web reporting. We will do subsequent webinars that focus more on self-service web reporting, but just to understand the differences, the main differences are that pixel perfect is about control of the design, and self-service is the main focus is easy creation, not necessarily control of design. And so, you generally would use pixel perfect reports for programmatic control across export formats. That means, if we see the report on the left-hand side there, that's a very highly formatted, let's say, PDF. And if I wanted to export that as an Excel, it would have a totally different type of design to it, and it would be very like native feeling for that export. Generally, the people that create pixel perfect reports are IT professionals and report writers, which I know is a lot of the folks on the audience today. And then for self-service web reporting, we're talking about mostly consumption on web. Design and customization, not primary concerns for us. You generally would require like a well-designed and performance data warehouse for self-service reporting, whereas pixel perfect reporting, it's more about SQL and query knowledge that you would require. So yeah, with that understanding, what we're going to do now is hand it off to Alesh. Alesh is going to go through a few slides about pixel perfect reporting just to kind of set it up, and then he's going to give you a demonstration of that, followed by a few slides about self-service and a little presentation about that as well. So off to Alesh.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep.
Yep, cool. Okay, so yeah, just to say good morning, and hopefully what we'll do is in the next half an hour or so, we'll go through an example of exactly what Ernesto talked about, the pixel perfect reporting. I'll give you a demonstration of creation. But just to give you guys a heads up on the kind of report life cycle. So how does a report get made? And like when you're going through this kind of report building process, it's important to kind of understand what stages the report goes through. So in terms of design, so Jasper Studio is an Eclipse-based IDE. It's a development environment, and we'll kind of obviously demonstrate that in a few minutes. But once the output of the design is something called a JRXML file, and it's something which is a representation of the report that you want to create, which you create using a design tool called Jaspersoft Studio. So once you've actually created that representation, then you publish it. So Jasper Studio allows you to take that report representation and publish it onto a web application. Now, the web application that it kind of links itself to in Jaspersoft Studio is something called our server product. So Jaspersoft Studio creates the report, and then it allows you to publish that report onto the server tool, which is a web portal. And from that web portal, everybody can consume that report. So that's the kind of overall life cycle. You create the report, you publish the report, and then you can have users that consume the report. When they actually click on the report, then what actually happens is that you kind of have this kind of runtime capability where all the JRXML file, the representation of the report, gets mixed with the data at the point at which the users requested it, and subsequently it generates a report, and then that report can be exported, it can be distributed. So you have this concept of you create the definition of the report, you publish the report, and then when the user requests the report, it marries the data, the parameters, and the report definition to create this pixel perfect report. So you've got no concept of, like storing hard-coded data in terms of report. You are just running that report at runtime, and then it's kind of ready for export or distribution. So remember, Jaspersoft is not just about running at runtime as well. You can actually have this concept of caching, and that's a whole kind of webinar topic in itself. But the principle of Jaspersoft, it's an open toolbox. You can pretty much do anything you want in terms of scheduling the reports, exporting the reports, having a live report that you run as of now with live data. But that principle of design, publish, fill, export, and distribute is a really kind of great one to grasp when you kind of understand the kind of products that we have. In terms of reporting bands, so this is getting a little bit more technical now. So hopefully when I go through the demonstration, this will kind of mean a lot more to you. But what Jaspersoft does is that, in terms of what Ernesto said, pixel perfect, what Jaspersoft allows you to do is create these pages of report, and sometimes these pages can go on for, they can be full report documents that, can be full financial reports or full reports on who's audited, who's been accessing data, etc. So they can be quite hefty reports. But in principle, each page consists of a title band, a page header, a column header. So the title band is repeated and printed at once at the beginning of the report. So you can actually kind of, I'm not going to read it all out, but the principle is that you're breaking down each page into a certain set of parts, into its constituent parts, and subsequently putting data into them such that they render in the right way. So you can have page headers, column headers. Group's an important one, because what the group allows you to do is break down. So if you're taking data from, say, for example, an SQL database, you can subsequently create a group which will segregate the data according to one particular dimension of that data that you're bringing back. So groups is something that I use. I mean, I've been creating these reports for quite a while now, and groups is something that I rarely don't use. It's a very common bit of functionality that's used again and again. Detail. So the detail band is a very powerful band in the data set, but it's got to be used with a really good understanding of what you're doing. If that detail band is repeated for each row of data that you bring back, And subsequently, you know, if you want to have some aggregated chart which is showing you data right across the board, then you wouldn't necessarily want to put it in the detail band, because that's going to repeat the chart for each row of data that you're bringing back. So maybe the chart would go on the summary page. So you've got this kind of understanding that you've got to have of these reporting bands before you start putting together these reports. And the best way I found to do it is actually just to play with it. Like start creating the reports, pulling back the data, and get a really good understanding of how to pull that data back so it renders the report in the right way. Page footer, obviously at the end of each page, the background, and the summary printed ones at the end. So you've got these really kind of you've got this great way of kind of segregating out the report into its constituent bands and then pulling them all together so that when the report is run at runtime, you've got this pixel perfect report created. So repeating report elements. So exactly what I said earlier, you've got this concept of a group. You can segregate the data into groups, and then subsequently underneath each group you've got this detail band which repeats per row. So you can see here that it's this it's segregated this data into this group, and then you've got all the names of the people sitting underneath as well, and you've got that data being rendered, and you've actually got a QR code as well, which is kind of individual for each row of that data set. And that's important as well, because obviously it's showing you that we can embed QR codes, but Jaspersoft is all about taking, producing any type of report. So if you write from membership cards with a barcode to a QR code, so you've got this ability to pull in any type of report together and put it into one particular environment. Okay, so detail band, lists, sub-reports, table elements. So what I'll do today is try to go through as many of the principles of this as possible, but just give you a flavor of what's possible with Jaspersoft. So the data visualization libraries. Now, what we're seeing increasingly is that the need for our prospects to have better and better visualizations. So initially in 2003, although it looks like an 80s chart, we weren't that far away from this kind of report, where the pie chart looks a bit 80s. For some reason, I always associate with 80s, but it's actually only 2003 we had this kind of chart. Looks a bit bland, and then we moved on to the kind of flash type of charting, which is still around. There's lots of applications which still use flash, but again, it looks dated. And then subsequently, more recently, we moved on to HTML5. HTML5 gives you this, this much better look and feel. You've got a more intuitive look and feel. You can zoom, you can filter, and it's just a lot cleaner in terms of what it's looking like. And then subsequently, what Jaspersoft one of the first tools that I saw that allowed you to bring in any type of visualization. So Jaspersoft has this component called a custom visualization component, and for years we always were playing catch up with our prospects and our customers. People would say, when are you bringing out this kind of chart? When are you bringing out this kind of chart? So what Jaspersoft does is that it still kind of brings out a lot of new charting. I think we're up to about 30 to 38 charts that we support out of the box in Jaspersoft. But what we also do is allow you to bring in any JavaScript charting library into Jaspersoft, marry it with the data, and then subsequently render it in the chart of your choice. So we kind of, I've worked on some recent prospects and customers that have actually used this custom visualization component, and they can produce some amazing graphics, and you're kind of producing the visualization that you want. No longer is it the question of what visualizations do you offer, and try to marry that with your requirements. It's almost you bring the requirement to the table. You say, this is what I want. Let's see how Jaspersoft can produce it. So it's actually turning the tables on the argument and producing exactly what you want. And we've actually got a breakfast workshop in London in maybe, I think it's next week, which actually talks about this custom visualization component. So please check our website, and maybe you can join us for that. So pixel perfect reporting demonstration. So what I'm going to try to do now is actually go through a demonstration of building a pixel perfect report. And bear with me, because this is quite a tough thing to do in about 20 minutes. So let's see if I can manage it. So what I'm going to aim for is this kind of chart. So if you're based in London, this will kind of make all sense to you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build this kind of report. So it's going to pull data from the Tube network API, and I'm going to build a really simple report, which is kind of repeating, so you can actually see the detail band, which is repeating. And also I'm going to introduce the concept of groups, and I'm going to introduce the concept of sub-reports as well. So all this together makes a very straightforward report. But you can see, if I can get that report emailed to me at maybe about 6:30 in the morning every morning, then it gives me an understanding of whether my tube line is running. So the Metropolitan line's good today, so I'm good. Okay, so let's go back and try to create that report. So for those of you that haven't seen Jasper Studio before, what you'll notice with Jaspersoft Studio is that it looks a lot like Eclipse. So if you've done any development, any Java development in the past, or C development, then you may have used this reporting environment. So what I've got here is I've got like my little marketing folder, I've got my reporting 101 folder, and I've got my reporting 101 backup folder. So if anything goes wrong, I've actually got reports that I Blue Peter style created earlier, and I can always refer to that. Okay, so what I've got my reporting folder here, what I'm going to do is create a new Jasper report. So I'm going to just use the blank template. What you can actually notice is that you can actually create your own template. So there's no real need to reinvent the wheel every time. You can actually have your own templates and create them that way as well. But the principle is that you kind of go through this process, go through this learning process of how to create it, and then subsequently the next time it's going to be a lot easier. So let's just stick with the blank one for now, and let's call the report a tube status report. Now, actually, yeah, so what I've actually done, and I'll show you this in a second, is that I have actually created something called a data adapter. Now, the data adapter, I should have shown you this earlier actually, but what it's doing is a JSON feed which is getting my data from the tube status API. So if I get the server response, let me just build this out, and then I can maybe show you the data adapter. So it's going to give me status severity and status severity description. So I've got my web service API, I've got the server response from the API, and I'm picking certain fields which I want to render on my report. Cool. So let me just do next there. I'm going to select the fields that I want to display on my report, do next, and then we'll do the grouping manually actually. So let's just do next for now, and that's going to create my report. So just to flip across to the Repository Explorer, just to show you this. So my tube status data adapter, what that is actually, it's basically a way of connecting. It's like a connector to a particular data source. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting the tfl.gov.uk network, and it's giving me the tube status. The connection type is GET. I'm doing a GET a REST call. I'm requesting JSON back, and luckily I don't have to authenticate on that API call. But of course we offer different types of authentication as well. So you've got the kind of the SAML and the basic authentication. So if I just cancel out of that, one thing I will show you is that, so I've created this tube status report, and you can actually see the fields appear here. Now if I just flip across to this, and I've got my web query, I've got tube status DA. One thing that's worth doing actually, so what the button I clicked on was dataset and query editor. If I click on that again and I look at data preview, one thing I always like to do is just make sure my data's being retrieved properly. So you can see here, this is the data that I'm going to render. So I've got Bakerloo line, central line, and it's basically showing, unfortunately, I think everything's good this morning. So of all the mornings, you can see that everything's running properly this morning. I was hoping for a couple of 8s or a bad service, but anyway, hopefully well, not hopefully, but that might change in a few minutes. Okay, so let's do cancel there. Now what we'll do is that when Ernesto talked about the different types of bands on the slides, what you'll see is that that's replicated here. So you've got all these different types of bands. So what I'm going to do for my particular report is actually delete some of these bands because I don't want them. And you'll kind of understand why in a few minutes, hopefully. So let me just make sure I've got everything I want. Okay, so let's just delete some of those bands. It looks a little bit neater. And also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a group. And the group I'm going to create is actually based on the tube name. So I want to create a group for every different tube line. And you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to click on name and then do next. I'm going to add a group header and then do finish. So what we've got now is a report with a title band, a column header, and a group header, which is one group for each tube line. So just to replicate what we saw earlier on that report, I've got a couple of images that I want to display on my report. So I'm just going to drag them across here. And if I just render them in the middle. Now, this is the important thing about pixel by pixel. So, you know, this concept of pixel perfect reporting that we always talk about. What you'll notice is that when I kind of centered that image, if I go to the properties of that image, what you'll see is that I can actually manipulate the location. So I picked 140, but if I wanted that to be 5, then I can manipulate that here. What I'm actually doing is actually changing the position pixel by pixel. So if you've got any particular reporting requirement where the image has got to be in 7 pixels from the right, or etc. So you can create that in Jaspersoft. It's a really great way of producing these reports and having them and not having to kind of go through the pain of having to check them, because you know that when you create them in Jasper, it's going to actually create the report in the right way. So we've got our image there. What I'm going to do is also add another little image, little underground image, which I stole from the TFL website. So add that one there, because you can see that I'm able to kind of change the size here. I can add some static text. So one thing that Jasper allows you to do is add all these text labels, etc. So actually, let's add the images there. Let's add them there. Let's move that across to there. So I'm going to change the static text. I'm going to call it London Underground Status Report. Okay, so let's move that down a bit. Let's change that. Actually, that text looks a bit small, so let's change that text. So let's go for, I do like that text the best. Let's change the text there. Let's change the foreground color of that to maybe a blue color. Okay, actually, let's make that a bit bigger. Okay, so now I've got nice tube image here. I've got my little report, and I've got a couple of bands that I've got some data in. So let's make this a little bit more useful now. So let's add in some fields. And what I've got here is I've got 3 bands, which is showing me the tube name, the severity, and the status description. So what I'll do now is that, actually, let me just add some text bands here, just to tube, just to show that the column header is not repeated. So let me just repeat that here. Status severity. and also one more for the description. Okay, so I've got that. If I just double click on it, it will snap the bottom up, so you're not wasting any room. So now if I just do a save on that and preview that, then hopefully what will happen is that it will go to the API, get that data, and subsequently render it in the report. So that's pretty good. I'd say that was that was pretty good. It's showing me all the status description, but it's not quite not showing me the colors, and it looks a bit ugly in terms of the formatting. So let's try to sort that out. When I drag those fields across, what it actually created was something called a text field. So this is a text field, and the beauty about the text field is that you can actually manipulate the data. So if you saw what I did there with the text field, then you'll see that there was these square brackets that I wanted to that I don't want to display when I'm showing the report. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a replace, because what's actually happening is that that's a string field in Java. So I'm going to replace those characters with, let me just find the right characters. So I'm going to just type in that, and let me just steal that as well, because I think I'm going to need that one again. And then also I'm going to open up that text field again, do the same thing, but I think there was another character. There was an extra set of speech marks that I wanted to get rid of as well. So let me just see if I can get rid of that. So now if I render it, what will hopefully happen is that it will appear without the square brackets. So yeah, we're good. So the status severity appears correctly, and the good service appears as it should do. So the principle behind showing you that text field is that there's lots of functions you can have. You can manipulate the date and time. You can have conditional statements, which basically take in a value or display a value depending on what data is coming from a particular field. And you can also have your custom, your own user-defined expressions as well. So the art of the possible in terms of rendering that data is, really quite powerful. So now we've got our report. What I did want to show you is actually a sub-report. So let's get rid of name now. So let's get rid of name, and let's try to kind of make the formatting of name slightly better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a sub-report component across, and let's create a new report, and let's create a blank report again, and let's create it in the right folder. So reporting 101, and I'm going to call this color report, and it will make sense why I'm calling it color report in a second. And the data source that I want to use on this one is actually a little table that I've created. And what this table is actually just a little table showing the hexadecimal values, color values for each tube line name. And I'll show you the data in a second. So you can actually see that I've got a little table which I've created. So I drag those across and do next, and let's actually just do next there. Let's just do finish. I can sort that one out in a second. Okay, so what I've got here is two fields. Now if I go to my little color report here, what you'll see is that I've got this table. And let me just pick the right data adapter. That's cool. So now if I do refresh data, what will happen hopefully is that you've got the tube line name and the hexadecimal value of the right color associated with the tube line name. So what I'm going to do actually here is create a parameter. Now this parameter is important because what it does is that it basically allows my master report to pass in the particular tube line name. So this will make sense in a second. So let me just add in, so where, actually let me add the parameter first. Let me just call that tube line name. Okay, so let's add the parameter. So the parameter has been added, I think. That's good. Now where and okay, cool. So what I've got here is a little bit of SQL which is saying give me the tube line name for a particular and the color for a particular tube line. Okay, so if I do that now, and now, so I've got my SQL, I've got my data coming back properly. What I want to do as well is I want to just create a simple line which shows the tube line name and also the color. So let's get rid of all those bands. If I do right click, remove page margin, just gives me a little bit less real estate. What I'm going to do is create a rectangle here which actually just displays the color. So I want my color to be displayed there. And also I'm going to have the text field. So I'm going to have my tube line name displayed there. Okay, so let's just see if this works, and then what I can do is play around with the formatting in a second. So if you just bear with me a second. Okay, so what I've got, if I do a preview on that, let's just see if Bakerloo appears correctly. Okay, so we've got Bakerloo line. So I've passed in a parameter, it's passing in Bakerloo, but the color's not correct here. So what I've got is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to refer to my demo here. Just bear with me a second. If I just go to that. If I just close that down and open it again, what will hopefully happen is that if I can look at the source of this, what I've done actually is that I have just added a hexadecimal value here. So behind the rectangle, what I've done is I've changed the back color of the rectangle to basically look at the hexadecimal value of the data coming back from the database. And also I've set the default data adapter so that every time that report is run, then it's actually going to use the little table that I've set up. So now if I go back to there and I do a preview, it should ask me for a parameter again, hopefully. Okay, so that's not right. So let me just type in Bakerloo. Oops, did I spell it correctly? And oh, bingo. So you've got the little brown color associated with Bakerloo. And let's just try something else because let's try another line. So let's try Victoria. And if you recognize a tube line, then you'll recognize that the colors are correct. Yeah, you've got Victoria appearing there. So now what we've got is our sub-report element, and we've got our master report element. So it's appeared there. So let's just change that across, move that there, zip that up, and hopefully what you'll see is that if I preview that now and cross my fingers, then hopefully what will actually happen is that it will automatically, from the master report, it will feed in each tube line name in the detail row into the sub-reports and then render them as one overall report. It's making me wait. Okay, and that didn't work. Okay, so let's work out now why that didn't work. Okay, so what we can do here is, okay, I think I know why it didn't work actually. Because one thing what we didn't do is we didn't attach a parameter. So that's good actually. So one thing I didn't do is I didn't pass in the parameter to my sub-report. So if I look at properties now, and look at my sub-report properties, what you'll see is that there's an opportunity to pass in a parameter from my master report to my sub-report. And I'm not pretty sure I didn't do that actually. So let's look at edit parameters. Okay, so there's no parameter being passed from my main report to my sub-report. So let's add something there. Let's add in tube line name, and let's attach it to the parameter which is coming in from the master report. Okay, so let's save that off now and preview that now. Perfect. Okay, so now what's actually happening is that my master report is passing down a parameter into my sub-report. It's rendering the right color, it's rendering the right text, and subsequently displaying it all as I want it to display. And although it's a very trivial example, I agree, that the point is that these sub-reports can be reused. So if you wanted to reuse this sub-report in another report, then you've got this ability to have very maintainable reports. So if the tube line color changes, for example, or you wanted to change the formatting of this particular report, you wouldn't have to rebuild all 17 reports that depended on it. Just replace it in that one kind of constituent area, and then you've got this kind of reuse capability. So what we've got here is a report that we've built, and we can preview, etc. So what I've done, actually, in the kind of interest of time, because I know that I'm running out of time a little bit, so what I've done is that I've already got a report that has been published. So to actually publish this report, so remember the steps that we had in the earlier slide. We've got the JRXML being built and then subsequently publishing the JRXML. So if I publish to report server, then it's actually just a one-step process to actually publish that off to reporting 101, and subsequently you can actually publish that. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll look at the published report in here, and if the reason why I'm going to use this one is that I've formatted it a little bit better. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time this morning looking at the format. So if I look at the tube status report here, which I published earlier, you'll see that hopefully it looks slightly better. To be fair, it doesn't look that much better, but I spent a little bit more time getting the text looking correct. Okay, so now in terms of that slide, so we've got the report created, we've got it published, now exporting. So if I just go back to my repository, if I right-click on the report itself, you can schedule. Now, what I've got here is I've got my inbox. So I just wanted to show you my little my TIBCO email inbox here, and you can see there's no emails in there. So showing a bit of magic here, feel like a magician. But anyway, so if I right-click on there and do schedule, and do create schedule, what you can choose to do is schedule that immediately on a specific date. You can have a recurrence type if you want. You can choose the output options. So as well as email, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that PDF file output to my repository. So it's a PDF output. Notification. So let me just see if I can email myself. And this did work earlier, so let's do test email. And let's have the report emailed to me. So if I wanted that report in my inbox at 6:30 every morning so I could see the tube line status, then you can actually set that up from here as well. So if I save that and do test job here and do save, then hopefully you'll see that executing. So in the fear of anything else popping up in my inbox, there we go. You can actually see 10:47 an email's appeared. So if I look at Elish Mystery email, I look at the PDF report, and you can actually see that the PDF's been generated in my inbox as well. So you can schedule the reports so that they get emailed to you as well. And if I go to my repository, And hopefully what I'll see is a PDF that's been created today as well. So that PDF's there as well. So it's been put to my repository. So that's really kind of a very straightforward demonstration of creating the reports, publishing the reports, exporting the reports, and scheduling the reports as well. So you've got this really kind of end-to-end report creation tool that really powerful. I've only shown you a kind of a brief highlight of what it can do. Okay, so just going back to the slides now. Let's just go from the current slide. So Pixel Perfect Reporting Demo, we've just done that. So the self-service report lifecycle. So you can imagine when you create a report from the Jaspersoft Studio, there's a little bit of journey, a little bit of training that you need. Well, actually, you need to have an understanding of how to use that in development environment. So you need to go through some kind of training phase where you can learn to use Jaspersoft Studio. And because we actually get a lot of users that don't really want to or don't have the time to kind of train up to use that Jaspersoft Studio, we have another way of creating reports. And although the functionality and the flexibility is reduced, it still does a great job of doing this ad hoc reporting. So the self-service report lifecycle, first of all, in order to do ad hoc reporting, you need a data set from which to report from. And this data set in Jaspersoft is called a domain. And this domain is an abstraction of the database. It's like a you've got a database which I kind of assimilate to a buffet of data. A domain is just a plate of data which has been created for you from
Okay, it looks like we've lost Alesh, so I'll take over here for just a moment until he is able to dial in. So, just share my desktop there. Okay, so yeah, it's hard to beat Alesh's analogy of the full meal and the and the plate of food. So for the life cycle, we start with IT, somebody technical creating the metadata layer. Design, though, is going to fall on end users. So they kind of design the plate of food that they want. And also distribution, which is the same distribution channels are available, whether it's embed, whether it's view on mobile device, whether it's schedule or view directly on our web. So as far as the domain it's pretty much the hardest part with the self-service reporting, because if you remember, Pixel Perfect reporting was really about, like Alesh showed, this super complicated designs, and self-service reporting is more about helping users get the data out quickly. And so most of the time is going to spend with domains. There's 6 or 7 steps that you go through when you create a domain. We're going to specify tables, which means like which tables from my database am I going to want to use. We can create derived tables, which means, okay, is there a query where I need to kind of create a view instead of the tables that are just available to me? How do those tables join together? What relationships exist between them, inner joins, all joins are supported. Do we want to calculate any fields once we've joined together? So maybe from one table we've got cost, and from another table we have sale price, and we want to calculate profit. So we want to subtract those 2 fields. There's also display names. So in the database, maybe the field is called something very cryptic, as they usually are, but then end users want to understand what that is and see a description, so we fix that in the domain. And then at the very end, we can also secure it, so creating row level and column level, and then localizing it. So creating a locale bundle where we turn, maybe English text to also German and French text with the same domain. So,
Ernesto, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back on.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what
No
happened there.
problem at all.
Can you just flip me back to presenter?
Sure, absolutely.
Cool. Sorry about that, everybody. Not sure what happened there. Okay, so hopefully we can see my slides again.
Yeah,
So,
we're back.
okay, cool. So in terms of design, the types of reports you can create with the ad hoc creation tool are tables, crosstabs, you've got charting as well, and then subsequently, so we've got the crosstabs here, where you can do filter by top N, you can do group the data in different ways. You've also got straightforward tables that can render the data. You've got charting with filters and different ways of actually representing the chart. So you've got different types of chart types that you can render that data in. And finally, you can bring all those different reports together in what we call a dashboard. So we've actually got a dashboard designer as well, which you can actually, pull these reports together and actually link them together as well. So you don't have just a dashboard showing you 3 disparate reports. You can actually make sure that they're linked together. You can click on different elements and have other parts of the dashboard re-render. So self-service reporting demonstration. So what I've got here, let me just flip across to my Jaspersoft server again. So if I go back to my repository, what I've got is I've got a domain which has already been built for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an ad hoc view. And I'm going to use our sample data set, which is called supermarket domain. And for this particular kind of buffet of data, I'm going to pick the inventory plate. I'm going to pick that data and do OK. And what hopefully this should kind of show me in a second is that data being shown in an ad hoc view. So this is an ad hoc view of data. Now, I know that this plate's been created for me to kind of answer some questions. So when you actually have these domains created for you, obviously somebody that understands the data model is going to have to create this domain for you. So they'll kind of create the right kind of elements of that domain such that you can see the data clearly and subsequently report off it. So if I pick country, state and region, state and city, and then look at units ordered and shipped, then what it's going to do is going to build a crosstab of that data such that I can open it up and see the data for each of those countries and each of those states. So Canada only had a few, but you can actually see it all building out here. So you've got a crosstab that's been built for you. And in terms of what I was saying earlier, you can actually change the aggregation. So it's picked some by default. You can have average, probably makes more sense. You can have top end filters. You can do sorts, etc. So you're building out this data just by clicking. So literally, it's not typing in SQL. It's not typing any data. And one thing that's probably worth noting as well is that although I've just done some clicks, you can actually kind of explore the data from this area as well. So if I did want to see the SQL query which was used to create this data, you can actually see it in Jaspersoft. So if you wanted to take that SQL and maybe build a pixel perfect report, you could actually do it. So you can actually select that data and then reuse it in your studio report. So that looks a bit bland. So let's change that over to chart to see what it looks like as a chart. If I just take across the data level, let's see all that data. And then suddenly, just by selecting the domain and just dragging and dropping the data, you can see that you've created a report. And in the let's just create that. give it a title. Let's save the ad hoc view in my marketing folder. Save that report, and the principle of what I'm showing you is that I've created a report now. But if I go back to repository and go to my marketing folder and look at the report that I've created today, then you've got a report in the same way I had the tube status report. And now you can export it, you can schedule it in exactly the same way as well. So although we've kind of gone through two different paths to create this report, you've actually ended up at the same place. So again, you know, like in terms of having custom visualizations, you'd need to build that from Jaspersoft Studio. But in principle, you've got two different ways to create reports in Jaspersoft. One, a lot more intuitive, but you know, like in principle, we've got lots of customers and prospects in the UK that are now using, you know, Jaspersoft Server to create more and more of those reports. And one thing I didn't show you, which maybe I should have, is that if I go back to my ad hoc view here, then lots of people kind of did previously talk about the chart format. So previously you could manipulate the axis, the labels, the appearance, but now underneath the bonnet, this is using high charts as a charting library. So you can actually see here now, you can actually manipulate the high charts library. So you can actually add properties, etc. So you can actually access the whole high charts library. If I can remember how to do this, such that you can change the colors directly from Jaspersoft itself. So if I do apply now and do OK, then you can actually change the colors and also change exactly how the chart, the look and feel of the chart directly within Jaspersoft Server itself. So it's very powerful in terms of creating the reports. You can do it in two ways and end up at the same result. Okay, so just going back to the slides now. So let's go from the current slide. So I think we're done in terms of Ernesto wants to add anything, but we're at the Q&A stage. So handing it back to you, Alan or Ernesto.
Thanks, Sulesh. Before we go over to do the Q&A, we're just going to do a quick polling question. So we're looking to see what topics would be of interest for everybody for future webinars. So the poll is now open. So the first topic is Dashboarding 101. Then we have Jaspersoft ETL 101, which is B. C would be Embedding. D is Visualize.js. E is Domains. HTML5 is the next one. And Building Better Reports. We have a number you can see here. So H is Integrating into Java apps. And then I and J are either a webinar with Gartner, the Analyst House, or else with Forrester. So the idea is we're just trying to see what we'll build into our campaign structure going forward. So if you can just take a minute to fill that in. We will take everything we can, and then we will go to our Q&A. We've had a lot of questions today. I know we've run over time, but we'll do our best to answer one or two at the end. Thank you. So the question is, what topic would you like to see for future webinars? Yeah, with that, I'll leave the polling question for a second, and we'll hand over to Ernesto to go through one or two questions that we've seen so far.
Okay, great. So guys, there's actually a ton of questions, which we weren't really expecting to have this many. There's over 80 questions that have been asked. So we're going to cover a couple of them here, and then somebody will follow up with you individually with your specific answers. So I'm going to be fair to somebody who asked a very complicated question very early on. So we want to transfer the where clause dynamically to the report by a subreport querying but it looks like the main report is executed first. How can I make the main report start after the sub-report? I actually got stumped by that question, so I sent it on to one of our chief architects, and he said there's no way to have the sub-report execute first, but that if he understood what the thing that you were trying to solve is, he's confident that there would be a workaround. So the best thing to do would to ask those complicated type questions on the community page. So if you go to community.jaspersoft.com, you click on answers. Do a good job of kind of explaining what it is you're trying to do, not specifically, that you want to run the sub-report first, and then he'll have a good answer for you. Okay, another question that came in very early, can we use summaries in groups? So the summary band, as Alesh showed in the slides earlier, is executed once at the end of reports, but there is a group footer for that very purpose. So at the end of each group, you would get the possibility to add a summary. Okay, one for you, Alesh. Let's see, 1 second. Okay, can you use parameters to set the font sizes of the sub-report? So similar to how you set the colors with a parameter, could you set the font size?
Yeah, so in the same way, what I've done, something I learned recently as well. So you can actually have the kind of the parameter coming into the properties, and what you can do actually, what might be the best way to show you that is if you can email me directly, or email me through the team, I can actually show you exactly how I did it, or share the report on how to do that. So, Ernesto, is it okay for me to share my email address here, or?
Yeah, you can share it on the Q&A.
Okay, let me do that now.
For that question.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll share my email address. If you just email me directly, I'll share the actually, okay, it's not letting me send the question in. That's a bit strange. Okay, so I can maybe I'll answer it directly and send you some examples as well. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Alesh. So yeah, we don't want to run over too much with the questions, but like I said, we will follow up individually with your questions. So I do appreciate you asking those. Kind of a little bit about where to go next. So first is the community site. So Jaspersoft Communities, particularly for the reporting topics, is very, very complete. I mean, there's a Q&A and there's wiki pages that cover a lot of stuff. So if you haven't discovered that, then certainly check that out. We have a new book that we talked about earlier, is Reporting Dead. Very, very popular topic. You can download it right now for free on our website. If you would like to get a little bit more involved, we are running a workshop. Actually, I made a mistake. That's March 23rd, not April 23rd. That's in London. It's actually in person with Alesh. Alesh is going to cover in detail the custom visualization component. So if you go to jaspersoft.com and you click on events, you'll be able to register that. There is limited space, so I recommend you go ahead and register for that today. And then some new webinars that are coming. We have the Secret to Data-Driven Apps featuring a Forrester analyst, Boris Evelson, and we also have a Learn from the Masters series where you get to learn from some of our most senior engineers like Alesh, and this one's going to be about domains, the metadata layer with Jason Huber. So keep that. You can go ahead and start registering for these webinars if you go to like upcoming webinars on our website as well. So with that, Alesh, I just want to say, round of applause. That was a very great demo, showed a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, and thank you for that. And thanks everybody for taking time out of your morning. Have a great day.